the internet. I mean, I painted a picture of the internet as being quite a democratic space in which we can all tell stories. But there are also very much vested interests and multinational corporate interests who are telling their stories. And so there's a lot of vested interest and control that's going on as well, and we have to try and respond to that too. So it's a very, very difficult space, and you ask a really important question. And I would say that, you know, not all storytelling is good storytelling, but we need to be vigilant and make sure that we've got the best stories, you know, and just keep an eye out on those. But I can't easily solve that, and I think you're right to raise that as an issue.
Hi.
Hi.
So I've heard about this idea of this conceptual idea of the empathy of the northern seas.
The empathy of what, sorry?
Empathy of the northern sea. Almost like a concept put forward by Bruno Latour called as Parliament of Things, where humans as ambassadors would come out and speak for the non-human entities to tell their stories. My question is, like, you have actually talked about the UN committee that you have been in. So how much do you think policy making also takes into account these kinds of the non-human stories?
Yeah. Well, again, another really good question about the non-human, and it's work on that is really kind of in its infancy now. And when I think about that, I'm doing a big project at the moment about treescapes and the importance of tree planting, and we're going around the UK working with people to try and understand what are the social and cultural values that people attach to trees by collecting their stories about trees. Okay, so people will tell stories about how they used to collect apples or chestnuts, or how they used to climb trees when they were children and play in trees, and how people will go and have picnics beneath trees, and people actually, or but memorial trees, people will plant trees in memory of members of the family, or when a child is born, they'll plant a tree in the garden. So people have very close relationships with trees, and we're trying to capture that. And one of the discussions we have been having is, what about the trees? What would the trees' stories be? And we're only just getting to the point where we're trying to work out the importance of those stories. And we're trying to work with communities now to get them into using storytelling to imagine, first of all, what the future would look like for them. What kind of future would they like to imagine? But also, what kind of stories would the trees tell them? Because, of course, the problem with the non-human is that they don't have a voice in human committees. So they have to rely on humans to be their voice. But I think it's a really interesting idea that we have a very human-centric view of things. But of course, humans are the storytellers. You know, we are Homo sapiens, but we are also Homo narens. We are also storytelling people. And storytelling is the thing that separates us from all of the species. It distinguishes us as a species, the fact that we tell stories. So we need to be able to try and tell the stories of those entities as well, because you're absolutely right, they don't get a voice at all in this if we don't try and bring it in. So really interesting. It's really at the very beginning that we're trying to work our way through this. It's a very difficult idea. Yeah, thank you.
Professor, it was an enlightening talk.
Thank you.
You did mention about the possibilities of applied storytelling. So
yes.
I would like to know, how far does this applied storytelling help with other disciplines like medical science or mental health system, because it is largely dominated by the so-called disciplines of psychiatry or psychology or something which is not much accessible to others. So
Yeah, yes.
I would like to hear about it.
Yes, a really good question. So there is a growing subdiscipline, certainly in the UK, that's called the health humanities, or the medical humanities, that is really about trying to bring the arts and humanities, and storytelling is one of those things, into not only the training of doctors and clinicians, but also into the whole way that we treat people. And let me give you an example. A few years ago, we were asked to be part of a project that was being led by the Institute for Mental Health at the University of Nottingham. And they were interested in this concept that's called mutual recovery. Okay, and it's a very health humanities concept. So traditionally, if somebody is ill, then it is the patient who is supposed to recover. That's the idea. In mental health, there's this idea that recovery actually involves everybody in those relationships. So it involves the patient, it involves the health service professional who's helping them. They need recovery from it as well. And it also involves the person who is supporting the patient. So it might be a husband or wife, or a family member, or a friend. Yeah? So the idea of mutual recovery is there a way, through using the arts and humanities, to try and enable people all to recover together? That was the idea, and we were asked to do some work on storytelling. And what we did was we set up a private website into which we had a few groups of doctors, patients, and supporters, helpers. And they were allowed to anonymously post their stories on this website. And I didn't know who was posting the stories. I didn't know who were the patients, who were the doctors, who were the supporters. But the stories started appearing. And as you could imagine, some of those stories spoke of people's struggles with mental health, particularly. And some of the stories spoke of triumph and of survival and of doing things really well and of succeeding. And I looked at these stories and I thought, I know who's putting which stories up. I know that that the stories of mental health are obviously the stories of the patients, and the stories of success and achievement are obviously the stories of the doctors. And then I found out that every single one of my guesses was wrong. It was absolutely the other way round. The doctors were the ones who were telling stories of their own struggles, of their own difficulties with mental health. And it was the patients who were telling stories of triumph over adversity, stories of survival. And I talked to the doctors afterwards, and they said, you know, the one thing that this has done is it has given us permission to tell stories that we're not normally allowed to tell, because we are expected to preserve our professional veneer. We are supposed to be invincible. We are supposed to be always right. We are the key authority here, and we mustn't show any vulnerability. So we're not able to tell those stories. But here we had an opportunity to do that. And this ultimately, fundamentally changes our relationship with our patients. Our patients were able to empathize with each other a lot more. And I think there is a problem in the way sometimes that we educate our health service professionals. And we don't allow them to be human. We don't allow them to tell their stories. So there's a lot of work that's going on, and particularly within mental health, I think, because of course, one thing we do know is that feeling able to talk about mental health and tell your stories is very important in terms of the road to recovery. And I think people need to be given permission that that's okay. You can tell your story. So yes, there is a lot of work going on there, and I hope and I think what it's doing is starting to change the way that we think doctors should be trained. And a lot of medical training in the UK now has compulsory arts courses. Doctors have to engage with storytelling or poetry or photography or art, whatever, as part of their training. They have to develop that set of skills. That's not from me. I have nothing to do with medical education. You'll be relieved to hear. But you know, that is happening in the UK, and I'm pleased that is happening, because I think ultimately, and my own experiences of the health service have been, you know, as a patient, you know, if something goes wrong or I fall ill or whatever, you know, and it's always a slightly uncomfortable relationship. I mean, I'm grateful for the help and advice, and I'm grateful that they make me better again, you know, if I'm sick or whatever. But at the same time, I always feel as though I'm being slightly talked down to, as if, you know, my story doesn't count and I just have to listen and be told what to do and then do what it is. So, you know, it's always a slightly tricky relationship. But yes, it's a really interesting question, that about particularly about mental health, I think. Thank you. Have we got time for one more? Are we okay? One more? Yeah.
Hello, good evening. Yeah, it was a wonderful talk. Thank you for that. So coming back to drama and theatre.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm working on theatre and climate change currently under Environment Humanities. So I'm really interested to know how storytelling and applied storytelling works in theatre and drama. And two things, like there is always, when you talk about drama, there is performance and there is a text, it's a play. So is there a difference when you work with that? And if you can talk about how you work on applied storytelling with drama, it would be really great. Thank you.
Yeah. So for a drink in the pub, and people were there, and they saw the musicians and they saw their instrument cases, and they said, "Oh, can you give us a tune?" So they got their instruments out and they started playing a tune, and suddenly the whole pub was involved in a sing-song. And I thought, wow, wouldn't it be great if I could do that as an actor? Wouldn't it be great if I could be that responsive? But I can't, because I have to, when I'm putting on a play, I need to get 3 or 4 other actors together, and we have to rehearse and learn our lines, and we have to get some costume and sets and put it. And I thought, what can I do? How can an actor be that responsive? And I thought, well, what you have to do is make sure that you take up no more space than what your body occupies, and that you strip away the need for costume and props or anything like that. And it led me to storytelling. So I got into storytelling as originally as an answer to a problem about theatre that I was trying to work around in my role as an actor. And the relationship for me between storytelling and theatre has always been slightly murky. It's always been slightly muddled. It's never been clean, you know, a clean split. I became interested. I've always been interested in stories within theatre. I've always been interested in theatre as a medium for storytelling, and we tell stories in lots of different ways. You know, we tell stories through writing, through painting, through TV, film, music, and theatre. The thing that theatre has, ultimately, is that moment of liveness. It has that moment when we are together in the same space, living and sharing the story. So on one hand, you could say that theatre is just one of those forms of storytelling, or you could say storytelling is just another form of theatre. They are both almost, well, they are, I think, completely inseparable as things. And I, myself, personally, I move in and out of those things all the time. You know, we have applied theatre, of course, as well as applied storytelling. That's where we get the term from. Applied storytelling comes from the use of applied theatre, so theatre, you know, for development, theatre, you know, in communities, those kinds of theatrical experiments. So yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we're out of time, aren't we? We probably better wind it up. But thank you ever so much for your questions, and thank you for being such fantastic listeners as well. I've thoroughly enjoyed myself. Shall I give you this microphone before I carry it home with me by mistake?
As we have nearly reached the end of the session, I request Dr. Radish Krishnan, Convener, Program Organizing Committee, GSFK, to honor the speaker and present the memento. Now, I request Mr. Roshan P. Matthews from the Program Committee to propose the vote of thanks.
Hi, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to each one of you for being a part of this remarkable event. First and foremost, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to Professor Michael Wilson, our esteemed speaker, for gracing us with insights on our environment and the issues pertaining to our nature in combination with the thought of storytelling. I guess all of us have got envisioned through Professor's words. A special thanks to the representatives of the British Council, our valued collaborator, for extending the opportunity to bring Professor Michael Wilson to the GSFK 2024. Your support has been instrumental in making this collaboration a success, and we are immensely grateful for that always. I express my appreciation to the dedicated organizers, especially Mrs. Adra and Ms. Ansia, for ensuring the seamless execution of this program. Let me thank dear volunteers and everyone who have contributed their time and effort to make this event a success. Let's also acknowledge the hard work of behind the scenes team, sound technicians and support staffs who played a crucial role in ensuring that everything ran smoothly. Lastly, a big thank you to the vibrant audience. Your enthusiasm and participation have added immense value to this occasion. We look forward to your continued support in future endeavors. Once again, thank you all for making this evening a memorable one. Thank you.